In this video, we're going to show you how to install the trunk catch, the top part of it, in two pieces. So that's what we're going to be doing. Go ahead, before we get started, we're going to wipe it down. And I've already done this, but just a reminder to make sure you get the edges, okay? So some areas do actually wrap over. So for example, it goes all the way inside this trunk catch area. I'm going to go ahead and get this down. So what you want to do is you can actually wrap your squeegee around here. Right? Spray some of that Tack solution, and you want to get inside the crevices like this. You just want to go all the way inside like that, and you can see that it's pretty clean because I did it. And then you also want to go underneath here, and then you want to open it up and go behind that as well, since it does wrap around, which I've already done. So once we're good, let's go ahead and use some of our slip solution, and we are going to be doing the bottom first and then doing the top afterwards, okay? So before we get started, what we like to do is do the last defense of contamination control. So what we're doing is going all the way around and just squeegeeing it down to make sure if there's anything on the surface, you're getting it off the actual surface. And then once you do that, go ahead and spray it once more. Awesome. So I actually have my pieces on top. I'm using my trunk as an actual table. But if you have a table, that's what I would recommend using. But for instructional purposes, we felt like this was good. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and just peel this. I've got it peeled about halfway. Make sure. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do my best to just kind of place it on the surface of the bottom part of the trunk catch. Amazing. All right, so I have it loosely kind of placed like so, and we're going to start on the driver's side right here. You're focusing on the first 3 inches right here, and all you're trying to do is line it up to this corner right there. And that's all you're trying to focus on, okay? So once I feel comfortable with the alignment, go ahead and spray some of that Tack solution. Just grab my squeegee real quick. And then you're gonna just anchor it down to the center like this. Take your time with this, okay? And once you're comfortable, I'm also looking at the evenness of this edge right here. You see this right here? You don't want this to be too far out, or this being shorter and this being longer, right? All right, and then what I'd like to do as well is just focus on about 3 inches right here. That's all we're doing, guys. No more than that, okay? I'm going a little bit harder in that area once I get it tacked down. And then I'm gonna go ahead and focus on getting the rest of this right there. Okay, I'm just hydrating it, and then we're going to do the same thing, but on the other side. So we're going to go ahead and just make sure this is loose, and it is. Spray some of our Tack solution. My apologies for doing that. And then we're going to do the same thing right here. So just go ahead and tack that. All right, amazing. Same thing, guys. 3 inches is all you need on both ends. So now that you've anchored both sides, it makes it easier because you can actually move this up and down. And if you notice, it moves really freely. And that's really what you want to make sure it is doing, right? But if it doesn't, you can see I can easily just spray the top because you're using gravity since it comes back down, okay? Once we're in this position, we're gonna go ahead and, you see I'm just using my thumb, and I could go up and down, and I'm just pulling it up just a tiny bit, and I'm gonna spray some Tack, and I'm doing the middle part right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and anchor it. That looks good. I actually don't wanna go past that edge. I just wanna go right to the line, okay? And then I'm just anchoring the center, and now I've kind of split the anchor, right? So it's anchored from here all the way. That's a pretty long area. So we're just anchoring the center, and then we can work on this side, and then we could go back to this side. So as I do this, you can see once you anchor these two areas, A, B, C, you can basically, it should align pretty well, and it does all across the board. So once you're comfortable with the alignment, if you have big bubbles like that, make sure you get it up. I like holding it kind of like with one finger so it kind of stays where you want it to. And then you can actually start squeegeeing it all down. Okay, there we go. And then once you get here, you could kind of adjust it if needed. Okay, certain areas might be difficult where it kind of moves a lot, and if you want to, you could actually spray Tack solution in these areas so it actually adheres. Okay, and you can see I'm holding it down so it doesn't slide down. Okay. Amazing. Okay. Do a double take all the way across. Now that we've done all this side, it's the same thing on the right side. We'll go ahead and spray from Tack. I'm just going to start right here. It looks really good, to be honest. There is some of that curvature, so just be careful. Okay, I mean, this is lining up beautifully, so pretty happy about all of this alignment right here. Okay. Just want to make sure that you're not missing anything, and then you're doing your double take. So once you have all of this bottom portion done, you also want to spray down the top portion. This is where the other piece is going to connect. So it is very, very important that there's no lifting edges at this point, right? We're going to go ahead and just gently just kind of glide through this edge right here. Great. You can see that right there. Just making sure that all of that is good to go. And it would be also recommended to, you can just go ahead and wipe down these edges so some of this moisture can kind of go away. And there you have it. This whole section is done. And if you want, actually one recommended is, you could have your break, you go grab a drink. I like letting this sit for like 10-15 minutes once you feel like this is really good for you, and then kind of going into the top part, because I kind of want time for this so that it doesn't actually come back up, right? So I like kind of letting this sit just for a little bit. So I'll get my snack, I'll use the restroom, whatever I need to do before I start on this, okay? But in this video, we're not gonna go do that. We're gonna go ahead and continue with it. So we're actually gonna prep the top part, and then we're gonna seam it together, okay? So if you have a table, and if you also have a helper, this is gonna be very, very helpful. This is a very awkward piece. It is a very large piece since it goes all the way across, that is one piece. And this is where this premium makes it a little bit easier, because there's one piece right here, and then there's this wing, and there's another piece. It makes install so easy, right? In this case, it is one giant piece. So you might need an extra hand, but you're gonna go ahead and do this by just hydrating the top layer first, okay? And then, one thing I forgot is make sure you clean your surface, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. This one's a pretty easy because it's just relatively flat right over here. We're gonna do the same thing over here. Amazing. All right, so since I'm on this side, I need to stop putting it on the top over there. Oh, one pro tip with this, is you can get like a little bowl of water and you could just dunk it in the water whenever you're not using it so that it cleans it so you're not damaging really anything if it does fall to the ground. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be peeling this side first all the way. Like I said, it is a very long piece. I warned you guys. All right, and I'm just going to put it down for now. Okay, I'm going to do the other flap wing right here on the other side as well. All right, change my hand. Okay, and then put that down. Okay, and then all this middle is not quite hydrated yet, so I'm just going to go from the under. Okay. Okay, amazing. Everything is hydrated. And of course, before we get started, we just want to make sure that all of this area is completely good. And because everything is hydrated, there's not really like a easy way to do this, but I think this is the easiest. I'll just grab each of the flaps like so. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this. That is no longer needed. And if you are 6'6", this is where it's going to help you. I am definitely not 6'6", but I'm going to go ahead and do my best to kind of lay it on top. Okay, that wasn't too bad, okay? But we're going to go ahead and fix this up a little bit. And now we have it on the surface, which is exactly what we wanted to do. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that everything is completely hydrated. Everything's moving beautifully. You see all this? There's a couple areas where it's a little stuck. So in this one, we're going to go ahead and focus on this. And then after that, we're actually going to attach it to this portion. And then we're actually going to move on and do the other side. And then just like this bottom piece, we can move this up and down. So that's exactly what we're doing. So let's go right here. Good. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just look up. The alignment looks fantastic right there. And then I'm going to just go ahead and tack about 2 inches of this area right here. Okay, like so. All right, now that that's good, we're going to go ahead and tack this bottom portion. Okay, this bottom portion right here is a pretty obvious one right here. And that's all you need to do. Okay. One thing about seaming is when you seam, here we'll get a better photo right here, is you don't actually want to overlap. You don't want to go like this. You see all this overlap? You actually want to just, we call it a butt seam because you're just going right next to each other. And once you seam it like this, you can actually push it down. You got some time towards the actual other piece, and that helps a whole lot in terms of making sure that they're good. So what I'm doing is I'm just pushing this down and I'm seaming this 2 pieces right here. Okay, and then I'm kind of focusing on mostly, you know, these areas right here. Okay, if it doesn't stick, you do need some more tack right here. If you see this body line, that's kind of my goal, is I'm just trying to get to that point, right? So that's my goal. Right there. Okay, amazing. So that is pretty solid. You can see that it still moves quite a bit, which is great. Okay, you notice I focus on all this, like I said, all the way up to this point, and that's really all you're trying to do. And if you have any other areas that's kind of sticking, that's okay because you can still hydrate it quite a bit. In that area right there. Look, if it isn't exactly what you want it and you want to go again, it's totally fine to actually just kind of release it a little bit right here. So I think I could do better right there. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and spray my tack again. Okay. There we go. Okay, great. So you can see that I was able to get all this, like I said, up to this body line is really your goal. And then you can actually start going away from this. And then there's actually exit point this way. And then you, of course, have an exit point this way as well. All right, just keep in mind this exit point, because it's all flat right now, it loves to hold moisture kind of all up in that area, which is totally fine. So just a warning. Okay, don't worry too much about these fingers, but if you want to get rid of it, you could just spray some tack. And look at that. These are pretty light fingers, so they're not really a huge issue. All right, so we are good. This is completely sealed. It probably took me a little bit too long, so I'm going to go ahead and hydrate everything else. So you can see I'm going to release all this, spray more of this slip solution all up in there. Look at all that. All right, now it's all free. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this top corner right here. Okay, and then you basically have to stretch it with one palm, and then you're going to just pull it down like so. So you just want to focus on really the first 3 inches like you did in the other one. You could actually use this to line it up like to the other side as well, the edge. And that's a really good alignment right there. So let's go ahead and spray that tack. Move this into that area. Okay. All right, need a little bit more tack. But that's the right move, right? So just kind of, I'm about 4 or 5 inches away, and that seam is beautiful. Okay, I could probably go a little more actually. Untack this. Okay, once I really tack it and I go a little bit harder, next I can actually start focusing on, same thing guys, this body line is really what I'm focusing on, so you can pull this out and just focusing on getting this line seamed up. Okay, that's really your goal. Right here is pretty good. Okay, and then here you can kind of massage this, but once you anchor that, the rest kind of falls into place. Okay, just like that. All right, so now that we have this part seamed, I can actually go away from those seams and go ahead and squeegee the rest of the area, just like you did on the other side, and then just focusing on getting all of that done. All right, guys. So we've got both sides completely anchored. There should be some tension being pulled right here, and that's totally fine, but look how easy it is for me to just kind of hydrate this area. Well, because there's a lot of space, you could hydrate it from the top or the bottom. Bottom is going to be easier. But next, this is going to be the last part really. You just need to seam the middle, and then like I said, everything else kind of seams up a lot easier. So now that the same concept, right? You did this thing, and then I did the middle, and then I did this too. Almost exactly the same thing in the concept here. So I am going to go ahead and spray some tack down the center. All right, One tip too, guys, whenever I do this, I don't actually pull on the area that I just sprayed tack on. Because when you actually do that, what happens is it actually anchors, right, as it is right now. So I'm actually going to avoid doing that. And once I get to this point, I'm going to do my best, right? There we go. Awesome. Okay, so here is where you could spend a lot of time on, but we did it a little bit lower so you can kind of push it down. And then once you push it down, we got this anchored. Get all these big bubbles out first. You see all these fat bubbles, okay? And we can go ahead and, hold on, I got something giant dirt underneath there. We're gonna go ahead and focus, since this is good, you're just gonna focus on this as well. Right? And what I like to do is basically creating anchor points as you go on. So you basically anchor this down. I'm kind of pushing it with my thumb, and that kind of guides it well enough, and then after that I can just work my way into this line. Like I said, if it's not holding, you definitely need to use some tack, and you probably do need to use some tack all around here. So just keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to use tack here. Okay, that's good right there. Okay, just hold it down right here. Okay, fantastic. Okay, and then of course you go away from it, and then you could actually start squeegeeing into the windshield. Okay. There we go. Like I said, you could spend a lot of time on this, and it's all going to be up to the level of seams you want. Like I said, if you do have like a spoiler that you're planning on actually putting here, then you could be a little bit, I mean, I would focus really hard on this, but then it's all going to be covered, right? So it's not as big of a deal, but if this is going to be your visible, especially if maybe you're doing a matte kit, then you definitely want to spend a good amount of time on this seam. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing over here. Spray that tack all up in there on the edges. I'm just going to push it down. Use my thumb right here. Okay, there you go. So good. Okay, and then after that, you can do the same thing you did on the other side, where you push all this into this area. Okay, and there you have it. That's the most difficult part that we just finished. So that's good. All right, so you can see some other areas still need some work. It does take some time for it to all completely adhere. So be very, very generous with your tack solution. And then you can actually just start using the squeegee to kind of tack it all the way down into the other edge, like so. And you can kind of go side to side like this and kind of feel the edge before you kind of completely put it in place. All the way. Also, if you have some moisture here, remember I didn't tack anything at the top part. So if it's very hard to actually bring it down, you could actually still go up. There should be enough time to do that as well, okay? Just like this. Awesome, so this is basically done. I actually felt some moisture right there, so I'm gonna go and get that out. Look at that seam, that looks really, really good. And then the next step is basically spraying Tack one more time and then just feeling all the edges. And then that finger will also kind of make sure that it's kind of adhering for sure. Just like that. And that is good. All right, so there is another area that's popping up. This is a pretty common area. I spray some Tack in there. That other side seemed like it was holding down, but now it will really hold down. And next, we do the edges. So since we're already here, we're gonna go ahead and do, oh, I did it again. All right, I'm gonna use this one. Since we're already here, we're gonna go ahead and do the edges. That's the inner part of the windshield right here, right? Just kind of getting last minute bubbles, or if it exists. Okay, it's pretty aggressive because I use a lot of that Tack solution, especially like right here. We're gonna have to open this, so I typically I don't like this to sit for like super long, so I'm just gonna go ahead and release that. We're gonna go ahead and start from the top, and then make sure you get some of that streams right here, and then you're gonna spray that Tack all up in there, okay? Okay, once you have all that Tack done, okay, when you do this part, really focus on the edge and just really going down into that. Not everything's gonna go down completely easy, and I'll show you how to fix that, but I'm really rolling over the edges, right, as I go down. So look at that. We put the optimal amount where it's not gonna be so difficult. So it shouldn't be too bad, honestly. But I kind of use the tip right here. You can see a lot of the water likes to sit right there. So once you open up the trunk latch, it's actually going to be a little bit easier because you'll see a lot of that water and the alcohol or the Tack solution that we just used kind of escape. And then as I'm doing this, just keep in mind, I'm actually really focusing on making sure no moisture is on the surface. So I'm just kind of doing this one motion right here like this, and then I'm kind of going over. So I go 1 and then 2, 1 and then 2, and then continue this like so. Great. Amazing. All right, so once that's done, I already did the other side, but I want to make sure that this is completely good still. Boom. And we're going to go ahead and open this up. Watch the water come out. That's all the slip and Tack solution that is coming out. So whenever you're letting it dry, you're actually going to just want to keep it like this for a little bit so it can all dry. But before you move on, let's go ahead and spray these edges down and use gravity, because you go from the top and it'll go down. So typically, I'll let this sit for a couple hours. I'll move on to the next panel if you're doing a rear bumper or something like that. I can leave this open. And I'll go around and then I'll fold this over like this once it's dry. It just tends to be a little bit easier. I'm gonna show you, if you don't have time, you could actually spray Tack like I did. And then you wanna just make sure you have all the moisture on the edges completely out. And then once you're here, you can kind of use a squeegee to kind of adhere it to the other side. And this makes sure that you got ultimate protection, including your edges. You can see all this right here. Right, so certain areas is gonna be a little harder, but you can see that it's already starting to stick with that alcohol that I just used. Look at that. The main thing for this process is making sure no moisture is on the edge right here. And that's why I'm making sure that all the moisture is off the top part of this panel, but then also inside. When I wrap it around, I really try to kind of grab that edge and really fold it over. You typically do need to use some sort of squeegee because you need some of that force. And then with that combination of the alcohol or the Tack solution, it will really grab. But on the other one, I'll show you right here. I'll just do a couple more, but I already sprayed Tack, and I could use my finger like that to hold. And you see all that moisture right here? This is what I'm talking about. But you can actually still get it out. Okay, and this is kind of why I like drying it out and then kind of doing it, but just making sure that it's completely good like that. Now there's no moisture. If there is, there's still exit points, so don't panic. Okay, so if this were to be dry, just make sure you kind of roll this over with your hand like this. And then you're just gonna kind of go around. There's not really a huge, I mean, there's some tension here, but very little. And then you could kind of fold this over. And then you really wanna check the inside part. So I'll show you that real quick as well. So once that's done, of course I didn't do all the edges, but showed you. Once it's completely dry, as you can see all this moisture right here, you wanna do the same thing where you go around it with your finger, and once it's dry, it should be a lot easier to put this down, but make sure you do that before I should start driving out on the road. Okay, that way nothing comes up. There's just a lot of moisture and soap that just likes to sit there. Of course, there's a recess right there. That's the main reason why. But just leave it like this and then do the edges, and now your trunk hatch is protected.